Cyrus54 back again. This time I'm going to be doing freeze plugs. So what is a freeze plug? Well, basically it keeps your coolant from expanding, any coolant and water that you have inside the engine. It keeps it from expanding during winter when you're not actually driving your vehicle and it starts to freeze, because ice will expand and it'll crack your block. So that's why these freeze plugs are in place, so that when that ice expands, it won't crack your block, and instead it'll blow out these cheap and replaceable little caps. Now, I've already tried to take out some freeze plugs and replace them with the engine in the vehicle. Trust me, it's a hell of a lot easier to just take the engine out. And you know how much of a pain in the ass it is to take an engine out? Well, it's easier to do that than to try to replace these while it's still in the vehicle. So on the passenger side of the block, I have 3 freeze plugs. I've already replaced these 3, and then I decided to paint them. That way I don't have to worry about them rusting again. On the passenger side, we have 3. On the back side, we have one of these 1 3/4 inch ones right here. We have another one on the driver's side on the top of the block. Remember, the engine's upside down right now. And then we have one really big one right here in the center, which is roughly where the camshaft is at. And then you have 3 more freeze plugs on the driver's side of the engine. The replacement kit that I purchased came with 8 of these 1 3/4 inch freeze plugs and 1 of this 2 7/32. Now, as I've stated in my other videos, this is a stock 454 big block. So the original engine color was green, and some of that engine paint was on the freeze plugs. Well, then the grease got to it and started eating the paint off, and then when I went and pressure washed the engine to get it all clean, or at least roughly clean anyway, then it washed away all the grease, it washed away all the paint, and then it started to rust. Then it started to leak, hence the reason I need to start replacing these. So how am I going to take these out? Is there some special technique to it or anything? Well, not really, just brute force. Just need to pry them out. Seeing as how I'm going to be replacing it anyway, destroying it at this point doesn't really matter. Oh yeah, nice and rusted. Make sure that your surface area is clean. Cleaner it is, the more likely it is not to leak. Now, I found that when you're trying to install these 1 3/4 inch freeze plugs, you can use roughly a 30mm socket, or if you don't have a 30mm socket, you can get yourself maybe some 1.5 inch tubing or something that roughly makes up that diameter. Make sure you put it in there flush and flat. You want to make sure it goes in there straight down. If this freeze plug goes in there at an angle or something, you pretty much just ruined what you're trying to do. Make sure it goes in there flat, flush, level, straight in. So now for the fun and yet a little bit tricky part. Hammer it in there straight. Make sure that you push it down past this lip. You don't want it flush with the end of the block. You want it to go in like the stock ones were. So just a little bit more. look at the stock one, there's maybe a little over 1/8 of an inch, just under 1/4 of an inch. Repeat that process for the rest of the freeze plugs and you're done. Now personally, I don't want to take a risk here. I'm unaware whether or not brass actually rusts or not, but I'm not going to take that chance. So just a little protective coating of a little bit of paint should go a long ways.